The second part of my audio on the course is just going through the other 4 acts. We've already been through the Child Act, which is 1989 2004. We've now got the Child Act 2006, which is the introduction of the early foundation stage framework that sets out all of the statutory assessment requirements. There's the Equality Act in 2010, which replaces all of the other equality laws. There's then the Children's and Family Acts, which looks at the greater protection to vulnerable children and parents who are separating, as well as disabilities. And then there's the Data Protection Act, which provides a framework to make sure that information is shared appropriately and that records of children are stored securely, and with personal and confidential information about children is not passed without prior consent. In these laws, what's important is the welfare of the child, the views and opinions in regards to matters that affect them, which we need to know what that is. Parents should be caring for their children as far as possible, and the practitioner should work in partnership with the parents. There are 4 standards which are essential and should underpin all responsibilities and work. By 2003, there was an investigation to identify that the children were not working well together. The child services not working well together, and there needed to be a different approach. So there was a critical green paper which says every child matters. And in the Every Child Matters paper, it was a government report proposing and discussing the first steps of changing the acts. So the Childcare Act defines that the new duties imposed by the local authority in the Every Child Matters outline shows that for working parents there needs to be some more support for young children. This means there's a legal requirements for the framework. The Equality Act sets out an offer to treat them with discrimination and also refuse them for very good reasons. The Family Act looks at greater protection for vulnerable children. And so on. So we've got some keywords here, links to the EYFS. We've got looking at the settings, making sure that you can look at data protection by having lockable filing cabinets, storage places, password protections, etc. Right, on the next important part of information, just at the bottom of the page, it says summarising the current legislation and guidelines. The summaries of the guidelines are then discussed on the next page, where it talks about things such as important for children to develop and learn what hygiene, safety and security, not discrimination is. We've then got a table of legislation with health and safety that goes into greater detail in paediatric first aid, space that should be available for children, workplace being safe, personal protective equipment such as gloves, manual handling, operating, lifting things, reporting injuries and diseases, and fire precautions in the environment. There's care standards for children, meeting children's needs in residential cares and all sorts of different environments, control of substance hazardous regulations, and the Childcare Act, and all of these are related to children in different environments, not necessarily nurseries. A useful resource is the Health and Safety Executive. Now that there are safeguarding, which is all the worries that you would have about children and young people to keep them safe. So it's a responsibility of everybody to look after the child's health and safety. And there are publications of working together when it comes to safeguarding children. We go on further and we go on to equality and diversity. Those type of laws are about being treated fair, variety of values and inclusion. That's put down by the Special Needs and Disability Act, United Nations Convention. And there's a We Are All Born Free booklet on that. So what's the role of the regulatory bodies in relation to home-based care? We're talking about England and in relation only. You could be fined up to £5,000 or sent to prison if you provide childminding without being registered. There is an organisation which monitors whether the law is being upheld or not. So in the blue box it says that the regulatory body for the UK is the Office of Standards of Education, or Ofsted, where you register as a childminder. There's various things that they do. They register people. That involves checks on you and the premises where you work. They inspect and carry out regular checks. They investigate any inquiries and they enforce, so they can take action against you. So enforcement is actions that they can take against you. Each regulatory body has different types of requirements to protect children, to reassure parents using childcare, to ensure the home-based services are acceptable standards, and they have a home-based environment to promote child's development and learning. All the regulatory bodies do have safety standards for equipment, number of children, and check references. Now, chapter number 2, which is understand how to establish safe and healthy home-based childcare environment. That's about explaining why it's important to take a balanced approach to risk assessment, explain the principles of safe supervision of and home-based and off-site, describe procedures for the storage and administration of medication, and record keeping in relation to medication, understand how to carry out risk assessments both inside your home and outdoors, summarise ways to maintain safe environment, and explain procedures to follow in the event of accidents, incidences and emergencies. Right, we can see that there is a summary of ways to maintain a safe and healthy environment for children in relation to formula feed, sterilisation, feeding, cooking, preparation, storage, food, safe disposal and care of pets. Explain procedures to follow the events of accidents, incidents and emergencies. The main issue in this chapter that talks about increasing awareness to keep children safe and the practices is to explain and give details and make clear by putting into plain words any issues of hygiene and promoting health and well-being, looking at the risks, the possibility or the chance of danger or the threat of safety in the context of play, and applying in new and challenging experiences. That's really important to make sure that each activity we engage in has a risk attachment set to them, such as every time you eat something, that could be something you could choke on. Every time you get into a car where you drive, there's a risk you could crash. Every time the child runs outside, there's a risk they could fall. And all of these risks. There are other activities such as mountain climbing, scuba diving, there are risks as well. You should have appropriate wording and wearing. And make sure that those are all written and we all know about it. Children don't know the risks that they are approaching, so there needs to be a balance to offer those skills and extend development. There's not only a risk-free environment that lacks stimulation, but you can also stimulate those risks and so they can know what's in there. They may need to experience risks firsthand. You can talk about risks and what you learned from it, why there's an element of risk and a play, and balance and explore those risks as well. There's a nice blog called Rethinking Childhood, and there is a link to the framework which looks at playing and exploring. There's also a publication on development matters, and there's an issue with setting where you can look at risk management. That's great.